In this video, we're going to cover how to download and deploy a copy of Windows 10 1809 from my MSDN account, taking into account the multi-edition version of Windows. I'll explain that more in a moment. And we're going to use the scripted OS install features of Ghost to deploy that out so that we can have a nice clean OS install later that we will be able to take a sysprep image of for deployment out to our other machines. So from here, I am logged into my MSDN account. I've gone to my downloads and we'll go to our Windows 10. I'm going to sort by release date just so that we have the latest at the top here. And what we've got here is multi-editions. And for the default scripted OS install, that's problematic because our answer file only allows for a single version of Windows to be included on the installation media that we import. However, the latest versions of Windows have been released with these multi-version only. You can't download only Enterprise. It's in all versions or nothing. So I have downloaded the Windows 10 Business Edition, and I've gathered my key as well prior to this so that we could save some time. So we'll go ahead and mount the ISO here. You can burn it as well. And we're going to go ahead and you can see the contents of it here. Pay attention to your pathing. Ours is in the F drive. So our command that we're going to be running here is a dism command. We need to open an administrative command prompt. And you can see here we are using dism, which is already installed on the Go server, /get wim info /wim file : and then the path to the install.wim file that is on our ISO. So if you copied the ISO off of your machine into a folder, or if your DVD drive was a different drive letter, you would want to update this appropriately. But dism already installed, get WMI or WIM info WIM file, path to the WIM file, and install.wim. Here we can see browse down to the sources folder where my install file was at, and confirm the install file location in the command line one last time, and do take a look at tech 252496 for more information on this command and then what we're looking for here. So we can see here on the first example, index number 1 is Windows 10 edition and the description is Windows 10 edition, and we need to know that for our scripting of the unattend file later. We're going to be using Enterprise, so our index is number 3, or our name is Windows 10 Enterprise. Now the second way that you can check your versioning pretty reliably is to go into the boot disk, rather the ISO, boot to it, and then look at what the number is, the order on this Windows setup screen. You can see here in our case Windows 10 Enterprise is the third one in the list, and that would be the name of it listed there and the description listed below, and the order is noted as the third one. And so the file that we're going to modify, the unatended.xml file, it has 3 choices: index, name, and description. Now that I have that, we need to go into my Ghost folder in the installed path, Altiris Express deployment server, and deploy. In the deploy, we have a Vista unattend.xml as well as a Longhorn unattend.xml by default. Please copy these and leave the originals original. The Vista and later is for client OSs, and Longhorn and later is for servers, although I believe the Vista unattend will work great for current server OSs as it's been updated more recently than the Longhorn one has been. So if we open it and make a copy, I have done that here. And a couple of things that we want to update: the product key. This needs to match the product key that comes from your MSDN subscription or from your volume license. Serial number actually would be desirable because this should be for a volume OS, so that you can legally deploy this out to all of your machines and have this serial number be included for all of the machines. Comp name can stay the same. We will automatically fill that in with the Ghost console. That's one of our system variables. The only other thing that we need to consider changing is our administrative password. Right now it's going to be just Symantec, and then our local account, which is Symantec, and username, Symantec user, and the display name of Symantec and the password of Symantec. So it would be wise to change this to a password of your liking. Keep in mind that this is plain text in the file, so take that for what it's worth. There is the ability to change that to be an encrypted password. Take a look for how to encrypt your password in a unatended.xml file for more information. These are all just Microsoft processes that we're running, so I don't want to get too far out in the weeds on them. We're just going to cover the minimums for making this work. Time zone also maybe would be something that would be desirable to modify. So this is my Win10 Enterprise unattend.xml file. I've updated the serial number and updated my password as well as set my time zone to Pacific Standard. Now what we need to add, because my source disk is a multi-edition following the KB document, then I need to add some information here under the OS image. I need to add the install from. I don't think that the spacing matters, but I like to have it for viewability. And mine, because mine was value 3, I'm going to go ahead and put it as 3. So again, that information comes from index information is my index number here. So if I was trying to do a pro build, I would want to use index 5 and then make sure that my serial number matched the serial number for this version. So we'll go ahead and save that and go over to the Ghost console and make a new folder for my SOI. Make a new job in here. Alright, I've got my Win10 and 1809. Now it's worth noting that Windows 10 Enterprise or Windows 10 1809 is not supported fully as of this recording with 3.3 GA, but that should be addressed with the next hotfix or release update. We generally get those fairly quickly. Look at the support platforms doc for more information on that. So we are going to do a scripted OS installation. We are going to do a Windows one specifically. My version is going to be Enterprise x64. English is my language. We are going to use the default automation, and I'm going to add new. Browse to my DVD drive and the setup.exe that is in the root of that. Okay, for service packs, say none. Those are only for earlier OSs. We are going to use diskpart. We could come in here with a custom script and perform the partitioning ahead of time, but we're going to just allow the unattend file to do it for us. We do need to browse to our unattend file that we created. So under our deploy folder, I've created my Win10 and unattend.xml. And we're going to leave this alone for installing of our agent and our basic settings. We could do some different logging if we needed to, change the IP that the server is going to connect to. We're just going to basically leave this alone. Biggest thing we'd maybe want to do in here is turn on logging and finish, or next and finish. Now we are ready to deploy this out to one of our machines. So that things don't get confused, we will go here and I'm going to rename this machine using a configuration job. That way I can keep track of which machine this one is, because it is the 1809, but I'm going to recycle this 01 machine. I would like it to still be on the domain, and we'll tell it OK, and Ghost is going to ask me for credentials for whom it will be on the domain as, so which account has rights to put it on the domain.
And if I didn't want to, I could not have it remember this password because it will allow this account to be used over and over. So for security, maybe you would not want to have that so that only people that knew the password could perform this job. But I'm okay with this in my lab. And I'd like to run that right now. See how long it takes for this machine to get this job. Yeah, it's already actually rebooting us. Okay, here we can see my client name is now updated to the 180901. I am still part of the EPM domain. See if my background updates correctly. There it is. So I have that scripted to happen here. So perfect. So hopefully then I'll be able to stay more clear on which machine that is. And once this machine sends its inventory, the server will also then be updated with its information. So let me make sure under Tools and Options, there's the ability to automatically synchronize the display names with the computer name. So I do want to do that. I would like what the actual computer name is be the name that is displayed on the screen. So here's my 1809 machine with my configuration job.
Okay, so we've got my SOI imported, and I have a situation where in my lab, the drivers for this particular machine, it's a VMware, are not included in the Windows 10 installation. So I can go into the properties of a machine and go to the TCP/IP and look at all of the different network adapters. In my case, it's only one, and it's a VMX Net3 Ethernet adapter. So that's the driver, that's the network card that we need to get drivers from, and then we need to copy them into the Windows installation media. So I have found here an excellent reference that discusses how to inject drivers, specifically VM drivers, into a Windows Server 2012 ISO image. So we're going to borrow some pieces out of this. It's an excellent document if you are needing to do this also. But what we're going to do is borrow where we are going to mount we already have the boot.wim available to us and the install.wim. And then we are going to grab some drivers and we're going to put them in the folders described here. And then we are going to go and mount the file. In the case of my situation, because Windows, so we don't need to modify the boot.wim file because we're not actually going to be booting from these files. We are going to be booting from the Windows PE, in my case Pixie, and I've already added the drivers that are necessary to my Windows PE environment. And do take a look at the video on adding PE drivers. But since the Windows PE environment we have already has the drivers that we need to do, we can skip our boot.wim file steps. But we are going to then need to mount and update the install.wim with the drivers. And as in this particular example, each of these is for the various different indexes that are on our install WIM. And so we can go ahead and go through all of these just as though they have and update them as necessary. So we saw that earlier when I took a look at it, and we're going to go ahead and take all of these and update them to match our pathing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in a notepad doc. So let's go ahead and gather up some of these files the way we need to. First off, we are going to go ahead and make a mount folder in our E drive. And then the next thing that we are going to do is make a drivers folder. And inside of our drivers folder, I think if we're going to maintain their process, in D drivers, we're going to have a 64-bit folder, and that's where we're going to put our drivers in. So new folder. Sorry, we have 64-bit. So just again to make the script go quickly, we will do it exactly as is shown. And here's where we're going to put our drivers. So my drivers I had already harvested. Oops. And I put them in the images folder. So here is my INF file, my sys file, and a PNP file. And I'm going to go ahead and copy those all to my 64-bit driver because I happen to know it is a 64-bit driver. If we were not sure, we could go ahead and open the INF file with a tool like Notepad++, and it will tell us then what's to know about here. Here's our various different server or different OSs that these drivers work for. Good. 64, and then the various files that are necessary, the PCI vendor information for each of the different ones, and the device information. And so we could go through and confirm that the information in this file matches the inventory for our system, because we do. Okay, so we got the VMnet2 is the adapter that's in there. We can confirm that this is for the VMXnet 3 card. Okay, so we'll get a nice clean notepad doc here, and we will put in the information that we're borrowing. We are going to remove the PCI file. We're not performing that. We're only going to be adding the network driver, and we are going to need to update our INF file name because ours, again, we're using this as a reference. The specifics here are for our need, and we also need to then find our install.wim folder. So our path real quick here is into the C drive, into the program x86, into the Altiris, into the Express deployment, deploy, and I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this folder in its entirety. That way, if things go poorly, I can come back and make a change there. Sources, under sources. So here is where my WIM file would be living. So we're talking about the install WIM, and indeed if we come down here, you can see here is my install WIM. So we will just go ahead and change the file that we are mounting from the D drive to the C program files, x86 Altiris Express deployment server deploy win SOI01 sources install.wim. Now, because we have spacing in our path, we will have to put quotations around so that we will have proper process here, and we do need to change our D drive because we're going to mount it into the mount folder, and then we will copy it back later. And also from our mount folder, we have the E drive, and we're going to add the driver from the E drive, and then unmount the E drive and commit those changes. So to identify which index we need to run the command that we ran previously. I'll show it here real quick just so that we have it. It's the dism get wim info wim file, and then the path to your wim. So let's change this real quick to the path that is for our SOI. So we will go like this. I'll need those also. So in order to find out which index we need to actually be working with, we can run the dism command like we did previously. So here we have it here. We're going to update though our pathing, and let's see if we can paste it in there. We can. Oops. Let's try that again with our path to the SOI file. Keep in mind this is sort of the advanced version, so this sort of thing isn't going to be what you want to be contacting semantic support for. Customizations to the installer and extra custom scripting is not something that support troubleshoots. We'll be troubleshooting just the basics, so just keep that in mind. But here we are using my command from before and pointing to my actual install.wim that all the way down in this folder. So my index that I'm interested in is number 3, Windows 10 Enterprise. So we also then need to change this to number 3. Now we should be able to go ahead and run each of these. You could certainly put them into so we could put all this information into a batch file, but we're going to just run through these 3 real fast and not worry about that. Let's do a quick CLS here, clear the screen, and paste in my line here, Wim mount. We're mounting, and I have the path to the install.wim and index number 3, and we're moving it to the mount directory in the E drive mount folder. It'll take the DISM tool a little bit of time to copy those over there. So while this is running, it takes quite a while. It has to mount and extract basically the files for each of these. The install.wim is kind of like a large zip file. We can go over here to my E drive real quick, and in the mount folder you can see now it's starting to extract files that are going to be used. Alright, now that that ran through, we can go ahead and paste in our next command for adding of the files. So dism image e mount. So that's the files we're going to be doing, and we're going to add drivers, and then the driver that we're going to be adding. Alright, so we've got I've got a typo. My path here is the path in the script is boot drivers, and my mistake. The drivers I have are not boot drivers, and the folder I have is not boot space drivers. So we will just make a quick correction here. Confirm that my path is really e drivers plural. Yep, drivers 64-bit and the VMnet 3. So let's try that again. Yep, so installing one of one drive, our driver gives us the information, tells us it was successfully installed. That's excellent. So case in point, make sure your paths are correct. Go ahead and copy our final command out here. Alright, so hopefully, cross our fingers, this is unmounted, and my new install.wim file has the drivers that we were trying to add. Alright, we'll go ahead and execute this on our machine here, our SOI with our unatended.xml. We had selected option number 3 and index number 3, excuse me, and with that we had the enterprise version, and with the enterprise version hopefully we will have loaded. We've added drivers, and so in addition to enterprise we'll have fully functional network drivers and be up and running. So that's the plan. Let's see if we have an IP address. Alright, so let's see if we have a IP. We do. Excellent. So our adding of drivers is working. So to recap, our SOI for 1809 is a success from Ghost 3.3 GA version. We want to double check your supported platforms to make sure it is supported if you run into any problems. The additions that were needed to be made to make the SOI completely hands-off were covered, and we added to the unattend.xml file that we were going to be using the index, so that we were able to add that. And then following Derek Siemens IT blog, we added drivers by mounting the WIM file and committing the drivers, adding the drivers, and then committing the changes. So thank you very much for watching. Keep in mind this is a sort of advanced scripted OS install walkthrough, and isn't the customizations that are in here are not something that Symantec support. is going to go through and troubleshoot, but I'm relatively confident that it will be a success if you've followed through and are using versions of the software that are supported. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next video.